Hey, welcome to another card making tutorial. We're going to make a So Thankful card using the Lawn Fawn stamps. And the first thing that we're going to do is actually make the background using some sequins and little glitter pieces inside of a laminated pouch. So I've got these colors here and then this little gold star, and I'm actually going to use some gold hearts and put them inside this, I think it's like a 6x6 lamination pouch, and then run it through my laminator. So it doesn't matter what size lamination pouch you use, you just, whatever size you have, you can make it bigger and then just use the pieces for other things. I'm sprinkling some gold hearts here, and then I'm going to add the yellow stars, and then I'll run this through the lamination pouch and it'll create basically just a glimmery shadow background effect that we can layer with some other pieces and not have to worry about the lamination or the glitter pieces getting rubbed off on other things. We're trying to find ways to stick them to it. And it kind of creates a window effect and a 3D dimensional effect. So just kind of arrange your glitter pieces, and then you run this through the laminator with the that sealed side faces downward, and you got to kind of be careful as you put it in there, otherwise you're going to scooch some of your glitter pieces around. I had a few that kind of got stuck and slid, and you can kind of see the mark on the lamination, but it wasn't too big of a deal. You can just kind of see the lines there in the center. Okay, next, if you haven't cut apart your dies for your Lawn Fawn yet, you need to do that with some wire cutters. And you need to be careful and hold on to the pieces that you're cutting, because you'll see here in a second, this one, I don't hold on to it as I cut it, and it just goes flying across the room. And the little tabby pieces will do the same thing as you're cutting them. So see, gone. So you kind of want to cover those tabby pieces with your finger, or with, or hold it like over something so that when it flies off, it gets stopped. Okay, and don't do it towards yourself, because if you're not wearing safety glasses, you're going to get those little sharp pieces in your eyes. Okay, so you just cut off all the little sharp tabs, kind of hold it in your hand as you do it. And once those are all cut apart, then you're ready to start stamping. Okay, so I'm going to just ink the entire top of this stamp set because I want all these pieces, and I'm going to color them later with my Copic markers or Copics. So just ink everything liberally, and then I'm just going to turn it upside down onto the paper that I want and go ahead and stamp it. But I just basically want those characters and the stump. I don't want any of the quotes, and there wasn't any point in stamping them all separately because I'm going to color them all and cut them out anyway. And just make sure you've got everything really well covered, and then you're going to go ahead and turn it over and stamp it onto your paper. And I just do it in the top upper corner because I've got a full piece right here. Press it down, make sure you get a good stamp. If you've got an acrylic block or something, you can use that here. I happen to get rid of all of mine, so I need to reinvest. I was cleaning, I didn't think I'd need them again, and then I changed my mind. Okay, so just press really well and then pull it back, and now you're ready to color. You can color these with watercolor, color pencils, markers, whatever you have on hand. I'm going to use my Copic markers, so you can see I've got mine all separated out by color, and I just sped this up just because the coloring takes quite a while. I'm usually choosing two colors really close together in the family, so if it's like a C2, then I choose a C4 for shading, and same with all of my other colors until I get all of this all colored in. Okay, and then go back and add a little bit of shadowing, and then go back over it again with the light one. A lot of earth tones because this is a fall piece. So in this case, I'd use like an earth 1-6 and then an earth 1-8 or 1-9. Having that second number be just a couple pieces or a couple digits apart means that it's in the same family, but it's just a shade darker, and so that's how you can tell what you need when you're coloring, as far as if you want to use a different color for the shadowing, or you can just choose one of your grays or neutrals and use that for shadowing. Okay, so basically it's just the process of me coloring all of these things that I've stamped now, and then we're going to get to the part where we actually cut them out and start attaching them to a card. Okay, so I've got everything colored now, and then I just went in and put some color on the stump because it was just black and white, add a little bit of shading and some warm neutral colors. And now I'm going to go ahead and start lining up my dies and taping them down. I just have a really light sticky masking tape that's used for painting, and so I'm using that to stick down my dies, and I'm just kind of seeing which ones I can fit on there all at the same time so I can get as many of them cut out as I can at once when I run it through the Big Shot or whatever die cutting platform you have, right? Some of them don't fit next to each other because the metal bumps up against, so you'll see me try it and then it doesn't actually fit, so I abandon that and then I'll come back and cut those out later. Okay, so this is just me still trying to find pieces and where they go, and then taping them down and getting ready to run them through the cut machine. Okay. And I'm not worried about any of this tape pulling up my color because it's a really soft painting tape. Okay, so now those are all done and cut, and I'm just going to save my tape so I can use it again and pull out the pieces that I did cut so that I can go ahead and finish cutting the others. Okay. So now find dies and line them up again and get them taped down, and then run it through the die cut machine again. It's kind of hard to figure out where your white shadow is going to be on these, so you just got to kind of mess with it a little bit. I ended up having to do some fussy cutting afterwards because I wasn't happy with how much white there was. I don't mind the sticker effect, there was just a little bit too much. And I have always been a fussy cutter, so I really, it's a stretch for me to want that white on the outside of my images right now. Okay, so then one more set all done and cut out, and we're about ready to start assembling a card. And I ended up using all the pieces that I cut other than the mushroom, which is okay because I really didn't like the way that I'd colored it anyway, so that kind of just worked out in the end. Okay, so then to put your stamps away, I just cleaned them up, and now I'm going to put them just right back in the case that they came in. For now, I kind of just folded down that flap so that the sticky wouldn't grab onto my stamps, and I'm going to just put all of my dies in the back of the same envelope so that they're all together and I don't lose track of what goes where. So if I just take, it kind of ripped some of the adhesive when it was pulling off, it ripped some of the paper, so I just finished ripping that off. I'm going to slip it in the back of this the stamp packaging, and then I'm just going to put all of my dies in there too, and then that way when I come back to use this set again, all of the dies that coordinate with the stamps will be there and I'll have them all in one spot. I won't have to go digging for them. All the little pieces and everything all stuck down in there. You could also just throw like a magnet sheet in the back of this packaging. I'm not sure how long the packaging is going to hold out for me, and then I'll have to replace it with something else, but for now it's all in one spot. Okay, so now we're ready to assemble. I'm going to do a little bit of fussy cutting on a few of these pieces just because I'm not super happy with the way that the white is uneven and there's just too much in some spots. So I'm going to go ahead and remove some of that, and unfortunately it gets a little off camera and I'm sorry for that, but I started sucking it in closer to myself while I was working. So I finished the fussy cutting and then on all the pieces that needed it, and now we're ready to assemble the card. We're going to do some inking on the background piece, which is this kind of a sunshine yellow. I don't remember exactly what color it is. It's from an older set of basil papers. I've got some memento inks here. The one is nut butter or something, and then gray flannel. Sorry, peanut brittle. I know it was nut butter something. Okay, so peanut brittle, and then and I'm just going to kind of rub it around the edges, just give it some dimension when it's all assembled and finally put together. And then I'm going to go over it with just a little bit of gray because I wanted it to just be a little bit more dark and stormy since it's kind of a fall scene. And then there's also going to be a Design Space file. You can either, well, it's an SVG, so you can either upload it to Design Space or use it with your Silhouette, whichever cutting machine you have, that has a pine tree and then a bare tree, like a bare deciduous tree, that you can use as the frame. And I just cut that 3 times, and you'll see that in a minute here when we get to the assembly part. I didn't show the process of making that frame. I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you already pre-made. as well as cutting it out. I didn't think you needed that tutorial with the Cricut. Okay, so I'm just going to finish inking with some gray. And I'm just kind of randomly swirling it around on the edges to just give that like a little bit more of a dark depth. You want kind of your light in the center so that it focuses your eye more to the center and the little characters that are going to be there. And then the dark along the edges kind of helps center or move your eye to the center. Okay, I'm going to move that over to the side. And now we're ready to assemble. So I needed some like a little bit more lawn or green grass in there. So I just cut out a piece of green scrap cardstock and made my own little hill and kind of inked the edges really quick. I didn't use a cut file or anything for that. I just grabbed the scrap out of the drawer and eyeballed it, cut it myself. Mostly I just needed it there for that corner so that there was a little bit of green poking behind them and you could see that they were sitting on something instead of just floating in space. Okay, and then I've cut my laminated piece with the sequins and the glitters down to 4.5 by 5.5 so that it'll fit my card front. And I'm just going to go ahead and tape the edges of one of these frames that I cut using my Cricut. Okay, just out of a gray cardstock. And this is the file that's included. Okay, once all the edges of that are taped, then I'm going to pull off the backing and then place down the lamination, just to kind of sandwich it in between all those layers. And then I did 3 layers just because I wanted it to have a little bit more dimension and be a little bit thicker. So then I'll just layer all of those together. So we're going to pull off the sticky backing, and then we'll attach the lamination. And you can kind of remove it if you need to, like if you kind of mess it up a little bit and it's not quite even. But if it kind of goes off the edges, that's okay too, because you can just trim this if it's not quite. Lamination is really hard to get square, so you'll notice that some of it's kind of hanging off on the bottom corner there. I'm just going to go ahead and put all my pieces together, and then I'll just trim it with my scissors. And I switched over to glue here. I'm not sure why. My brain just said grab the glue. So I grabbed glue and did it on the edges of this lamination also, and it stuck really well. So you can use either the glue or the really strong double-sided sticky tape. Just because of the mess, I probably would have gone with the sticky tape, but I needed some here in the center of the trees too. So it mix and match if you need to. Put some sticky tape down and some glue, whatever works best for you. Okay, and then just line up all the different layers of your background. Make sure your edges are nice and straight. I just clean up some glue here, and then you'll see that the lamination is kind of sticking out there on that bottom right hand corner. I'll trim that off here in a second. So if you have any lamination that's sticking out, just go ahead and trim it off. If you wanted to, you could just have the whole sheet that you attach there too, so that you can kind of line up some of those sequins and stuff where you want them inside your scene, and then just trim off the edges from there. Okay, then we're going to add one more layer to the background. Okay, so we add some more glue to the piece that's on the table just because it's easier and sturdier, right? And then I'm gonna, once I get all the glue where I need it on these trees, I'm gonna add in that green piece of lawn because I wanted it closer to the top. I didn't want it back there in the back with the sequins. So your layering and the order that you layer it in gives it a little bit of dimension also. So I'm gonna take that green lawn piece and glue it down into my bottom left corner, and then add a little bit of glue to the edges so that it'll still hold the top piece down. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of glue on the back of the back and bottom of the deciduous tree, the one without any leaves on it, just because it needs to stick to that green. And then just line everything up and get it all pressed. Make sure all your glue is smeared. Okay, and you should have a fairly thick piece now ready to go on the front of your card that has some really pretty dimension to it. Okay, so then I'm going to glue this to the front or the face of my card, and then once it's glued to this yellow and I get all the characters added, then that's when we add it to the actual card. Right now it's just a card face. I just add the glue to all the pieces of the paper just because I know that that'll stick. Like the glue is going to absorb down into the fibers of the paper better than it would into that plastic, and stick the two pieces of paper together better. I had a little bit of a limb coming up here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more glue to the plastic. Because when I press this down into the face, it's going to stick a little bit better, or the pressure will help that re-glue. And then just line up your edges again. Get it as even as you can, and then press it down. Okay, just make sure all your glue and all your corners and everything are really well pressed. There might be some glue that glue is oozing out underneath the plastic, so there's not much I can do about it, but it's going to dry clear, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so now just go ahead and fiddle with where you want your pieces to be, like your elements and your characters. The stump is fairly large, so it's gonna, and obviously it's gonna be on the ground, so it's gonna go a little bit lower. And then I was just figuring out dimension-wise how I wanted to place the other little characters and where I want them. Okay, do I want them on the stump? Do I want them in front of the stump? Do they all need to go behind the stump? And what I decided was I 3D pop this stump and then put two characters behind and one in front. And then obviously most of the food is going to go on the stump. You could put some on the ground too if you wanted, but there really isn't much room on a 4.5 by 5 by 5 card. So on top of the stump as a table is better anyway. So here I'm just going to go ahead and use some 3D foam pieces, some foam dots. Okay. And mine are a little bit older, so you'll notice I kind of struggle with some of the backing pieces. When I was pulling it off of the sheet, usually the backing piece comes off as you pull off. Mine were not coming off, so I get to fiddle with all these little tiny pieces and try to get them stuck when parts aren't coming off. And then pieces are sticking to me and not where they're supposed to. This one still has a backing. It's time for some new 3D dots or foam pieces. Okay, so then once you've got enough adhesive on the back of your stump piece, you can go ahead and attach it to the front of your card. Okay, and then go ahead and start attaching your little critters. Because the hedgehog and the raccoon are going behind the stump, I'm just going to glue them down. I'm not going to worry about any foam dots or anything. Just going to go ahead and use glue. And same with the little raccoon. He's going to go behind the stump also, so he just gets some little glue and stick him on there. I basically ended up using 3 different types of adhesive, and I'll make a supply list for this video that you can click on below to grab, or inside the blog post, of all the different things that I used to make this card. But I've got the double-sided sticky tape and the roll there, and then I used 3D foam dots, and then the Elmer Super Tacky PVA glue. Okay, so now I'm going to put some 3D dots on this squirrel, and the one dot would end up on top of the stump, so I actually end up taking that off the back of his head because I don't want him leaning out away from the stump. And then I'll just use that on the back of his tail. And then, so now he's kind of in front of the stump, but really the same height as the stump. And then just a little dot of glue on the stump to keep his head sealed down. And then I'm going to put the pilgrim hat on top of the squirrel just because it was cute. And I'd already cut out the pilgrim hat, so it needed to be used. Okay, and now I'm just going to fiddle with some of the food and this mushroom. I decided I'd end up not using it just because I couldn't figure out where I wanted it. At the time it didn't look good there with the hedgehog, and then I think, oh, it doesn't look bad, but yeah, I just didn't end up using it. So 86 the mushroom, and then just fiddle with the food and see how you want to arrange your table. I thought the acorn would look cute here in the tree, so I just went ahead and put a little dab of glue on the acorn and put it in this tree, so it looks like all of the glitter and sequins and stuff in the back are the leaves flying off the tree, but the acorn is still stuck there. Okay, and now just play with the food. I've got everything on the table, on the stump, and just rearrange until you can kind of get the feast organized. And then I went ahead and stamped out "So Thankful" on a piece of cardstock and inked the edges just a little bit, and I'm going to just put that right across the front of the stump. And you'll see I've got all my food organized, and I put a cup of whatever the hedgehog is drinking in his little hand, so that it looks like that they're all joining at the feast at the stump, which is the table. And then I'm going to just go ahead and glue this whole card face onto my 4.5 by 5.5 card blank. So it's just a piece of cardstock paper that I cut at 5.5 tall by 9 inches long, and then fold in half, so it's a 4.5 by 5.5 card. And then just glue the face on there. Make sure all of your edges are lined up really nice. Hold them tight and press it really well until your glue gets sunk in there and holds everything where you want it. Okay, and so now that is finished. It's ready to be signed or stamped on the back and sent off. Thanks for joining me, and if you want to check out my blog for other tutorials, it's lemonyfizz.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you need any help. Okay, another cute card ready to go.